This is going to be exciting because we're about to go on a geological expedition back in time, thousands of years back into Earth's past, to the very first stages of the flood. So what we're going to see as we enter the first tunnel, which is right around the bend, we're going to see all of these rocks. Sedimentary strata, which is usually like this right here. It's because sediment has been washed in sheets. Boom, boom, boom. Sedimentary strata, when uplifts happen, when tectonic movements, when faults occur, weird things happen. And what you will see is sandstone that has been stood up vertically, like this right here, bent like we saw last night. So folded strata, which was then lithified or turned to stone. And you're going to see that immediately in the next few hundred feet as we exit the tunnel. Look to your left, look very quickly, but then we're going to keep on going. Once we make the next stop, you'll be able to see an S-shaped curve of this strata. And remember, the farther we go back here, we're going farther back in time. Maybe only a few hours, or maybe only a few days. But because the sediment is stacked up like this in so many different ways, we're going farther back in time through the Cambrian until we hit pre-Cambrian granites. And the pre-Cambrian granites are like the igneous and metamorphic fused rocks that originally were formed when God said, "Let the dry land appear." Okay, so the farther back we go, we're going to get out of flood layers, and we're going to get at the very last into granites, into solid rock. Check it out. Strata standing upright, curved, and going all the way to the top of that giant cliff. Fossil is a trace fossil, like footprints. It could be small trace fossils in these rocks, and I can't tell you how many times in these types of sandstones and in small shale beds I have found little amphibian trackways, or sometimes trilobite trackways. Well, trilobites were like the pre-flood underwater roly-polies. You know the roly-polies, the little things that curl up when they human threatened? You find those things in these Cambrian rocks, except they were much, much, much larger, and they left a little trail with hundreds of footprints in the sand. Strata that we're seeing right here as we enter this tunnel, you see it? It's vertically spaced, and then it curves around.
It's straight there. Wow.
That's folded rock.
Cycles occur, well, that water swells, and then it goes down, and then that water swells, and then it goes down, and then eventually, once it does this enough times, an entire piece of boulder will break off, and it will simply fall down because of what we call sapping. And so this sapping is really, really dangerous, especially when you know that there are loose boulders and rocks above you, because you never know when they're going to come down. The sedimentary layers right here are angled upwards. And you see there are uplifts, and there are also pockets of magma sometimes that will push up on layers of sediment and it will bend it. There are also situations where you'll have a bunch of sedimentary layers, okay? And then the latter stages of the flood started to wash away the loosest, the least lithified layers, okay? Now, when it does this, and then that water washes away, well, water weighs a lot.
Dirt weighs a lot, and muddy dirt weighs a whole lot. So what happens is that when that water washes away sediment in an area, let's just say right through this gorge, well, now you've relieved tons of pressure on these underlying rocks. So what do? They say, thankfully now I can breathe. So they begin to uplift and push up, and they relieve the strain of all of those rocks. And sometimes that's how you get these uplifted layers, because you see it's going up on this side and up on this side, right? So there are a lot of different situations that can cause formations like this. But if you'll notice, if you look at the very top, you see the brownish rocks? The rest are gray. If you look at the brown rocks, what you're going to figure out is that that is the actual color of the rocks. The gray is what happens once it's exposed to weathering, exposed to the sun, exposed to mineral drips for hundreds of years. Then those rocks get stained this gray color. But when you have sapping, when you have pieces of boulders come crashing down, well, then it exposes what the rock actually looks like inside of that cliff, and that's that lighter brown material. We see the same thing at the Grand Canyon. In the Grand Canyon, there is a beautiful red layer. It's called the Red Wall Limestone. And it's this magnificent red color, about the color of these red trees, these dark red trees. And yet, when part of that cliff breaks off, it's white underneath it. And the red is only caused because above the overlying layers, those sedimentary layers above, which are shales, the Hermit Shale, the Supai group, which has high iron content, it comes washing down the cliffs of the limestone and stains the limestone red, but only on the outside.
3 or 4, there's not a whole lot of creatures.
I found some of these crinoids, and I was like, what in the world is this? And then I learned this is a sea creature. This is not a plant. This is a sea creature. It's a weird looking sea creature, but it had a cylindrical round stalk that went up like this, but it was flexible. And then it had a little bulb at the bottom that anchored it down to the bottom of the ocean floor. And then it had a little tentacles up at the top of it, of this big long stem, and those little tentacles could move around all they wanted to. So this is actually an animal from the middle of the pre-flood seas called a crinoid. So this is bent and folded strata. Now sometimes you can have intrusions where there will be something that was filled in, but you can see the individual layers of that bend that then smoothly bend around and comes back this way into the cliff. So when you see bent and folded strata like this is obviously evidence of rapid deposition, because folded strata does not happen if the layers are already lithified or hardened. So when layers lithify or harden, all of the water and all of the moisture goes out of the rock, and then the minerals cement themselves together and they turn to stone. But when that rock is hardened or lithified, it's going to be brittle. You can't actually bend it, you can only break it. And just so to see it bent like this means that this happened very quickly while these layers were still soft. In many places in this area, you will find sandstone with little intrusions of shale.
Right.
And the shale flakes off like this.
Right.
And shale is usually fossiliferous layers, so you can usually find fossils much better in the shale. But this appears to be kind of a conglomerate. It's really
It's a mix.
sand. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really a messy mix. So I don't expect it.
Yeah. Okay. But would that be something that would be caused in catastrophic? Just because it's in with these other
with the other layers,
rocks?
yeah.
That's a lot farther.
Yes and no, because you see the secularists would say, when they see something like this, well, these other rocks were laying here for millions of years, and then there was a pond right here that had a little sediment grow at the bottom of the pond, and that's the shale that you're looking at.
Right.
So there are always ways, there are rescuing devices around that.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's not learning and breathing.
Well, it's right. So like going into last summer, right? You know, we get to March.
We did it, and just recently, and then as you get farther back over here,
All like the CC kids would do like collector with like bandana masks.
That's a little bit more violent.
Now, Doom is